Welcome back to the Ghost Recaps. Today we will recap an adventure film called The Legend of Tarzan. Be ready for spoilers ahead. In the year 1884, after the Berlin Conference, King Leopold of Belgium took control of the African Congo, a place so rich in ivory and minerals, that he put everything on the line trying to exploit it, but he lost his entire fortune and ranked up huge debts doing so. So in a desperate attempt to save his kingdom, King Leopold sent his most trusted servant called Leon Rom to this dense jungle, to find the source of the legendary diamonds, the diamonds of Opar. And after walking through the grasslands and through the dense jungle, Leon Rom and his convoy of armed soldiers finally see it, a gigantic head sculptured on the side of the cliff, marking the entrance to the famous Opar, the source of the best diamonds in the entire world. But suddenly, thick fog starts flowing, slowly coming towards them. Then a spear is thrown from the fog, but it completely misses everyone. The soldiers quickly take position ready to retaliate. They open fire into the thick fog, without caring who and what would be hit, and when the fog finally cleared out, there were some few dead people on the ground. In spite of this, they march on even deeper, through the narrow gaps and in between the cliffs deeper into this scary place. Then out of the fog, they see figures that sent sweat down their spines. It was men holding guns crucified on sticks, to send a clear message to anyone who would dare to trespass beyond this point. And if that was not scary enough, when they looked up onto the cliffs, they are completely surrounded and sandwiched between men armed with spears. Suddenly, men jump from the waters and others run from the fog and attack them. Despite of their superior weapons, the Belgian forces are clearly outnumbered and outskilled. Leon Rom is forced to cower, and hide beneath two shields as he watched his men get annihilated, and as quickly as the attack began, it ends. And things go completely still. When Leon finally looks up again, he is the only survivor and is completely surrounded, making him get consumed by fear, as this is a much worse fate than death, as he is sure he will first be tortured, then crucified to be a warning sign for others like him. As the warriors begin to slowly encroach towards him, Chief Mbonga appears behind Leon, and Leon quickly introduces himself, as he had come all that way just to see this particular chief. He wants access to the Opar diamond mines, and surprisingly, Chief Mbonga is willing to give them to him, and all he wants in exchange is for Leon to bring the man who killed his only son. And Leon quickly makes a deal with Chief Mbonga, accepting to bring a man known to the locals as Tarzan. On the other side, in the city of London, the Lord of Greystoke John Clayton III, had been summoned by the Prime Minister of England to a council meeting, to try and convince him to accept an invitation by King Leopold to visit the Congo Free State, in order to see the development he had made for the locals, by building schools and churches for them, as King Leopold had defaulted on many of his loan payments. This visit would open trade discussions and allow England to be his new partner, a partnership that would give England access to the richest region in the world, and according to the Prime Minister, this would be a win-win situation for everybody, as the Africans will get schools and churches, King Leopold will get a new partner, and England will have access to the richest region in the world. But Lord John Clayton was not having any of it. He politely declined their offer as he could easily see through their lies, and in this meeting is an American diplomat called Dr. Williams, who had been sent by the American president, and when John Clayton left the building, Williams quickly followed him to try and convince him otherwise. But unlike the greedy Prime Minister, Williams had other intentions. He wants him to accept the invitation by King Leopold and take him along, as he had been sent by the American government to investigate if King Leopold was using slavery to keep control of the Congo. So owing to the more reasonable nature of this request, John agrees to accept the invitation. Before John became the Lord of Greystoke, he was actually known by the name Tarzan. He gets vivid flashbacks of how he was introduced to this seemingly unforgiving, cruel but somehow beautiful world. When he was a child, his parents shipwrecked and they were stranded in the dense jungle. The conditions were so harsh that his mother got sick and passed away. But one day, a troop of angry gorillas came swinging and surrounded his father, who stupidly took a stone and threw it towards the alpha male, causing them to be very angry and attack him, crushing him to death. But when baby Tarzan began to cry, a mother gorilla found him and felt pity for this poor child, so she took baby Tarzan and adopted him, raising him as her own. But the alpha never truly embraced Tarzan. He remembered how one day the alpha started chasing him, trying to kill him, and when he caught him, the poor boy could only crouch on the forest floor waiting for his death. But the rest of the troop had accepted and loved Tarzan, forcing the alpha to let him live. He remembered that at some point, the only parent he knew was that gorilla, who loved and treated him like her own. When the news of going to Africa reaches his wife Jane Porter, she was very happy as she was finally going home, going to the place she was raised in. John tries to convince her to stay as it was very dangerous, but Jane was having none of it, and still insists that she must go, forcing Tarzan to accept to bring her along. So the three set foot heading to the Congo, and as they were climbing a small hill, they came across a pride of lions. Tarzan slowly started crouching down, until he was as low as possible, looking directly into the lion's eyes, and after sniffing him, it also lowered its head and started rubbing against him. It turns out, he had known these lions since they were little calves. They then continued with their journey, until they arrived in a small village just outside the Congo forest. The chief of Cuba tribe came out of his hut to meet with Tarzan, and embraced him and welcomed him back, and Jane got an even warmer welcome, as the women started singing welcoming the three people into their home. Although they had been welcomed with open arms, that was not always the case for Tarzan, as when Tarzan was still young, the villagers believed that he was an evil spirit, a white ghost in the tree they called him, as he had powers over the animals and would communicate with them. They believed he was a spirit animal who ruled over the animal kingdom, and since some of the local tribes hunt the animals as a rite of passage, Tarzan considered all men his enemy, and would brutally kill anybody who came too near. But his beastly nature was conquered by Jane's beauty. He would watch her from the tree branches, and through the leaves, too afraid to walk up to her. Sometimes he would come out and start touching and sniffing her. But one day, she mistakenly followed him a bit too deep into the jungle, and Tarzan's gorilla family did not like that at all. So when the alpha tried to attack her, Tarzan intervened, and laid on top of Jane, protecting her from the alpha gorilla's punches, that would have without doubt killed her, and due to the injuries he sustained, he was rescued by the villagers, and treated until he got well. On the other side, in the port of Boma, a town dominated by white men, Leon finally discovered that Tarzan had jumped ship further up the coast, making his deal with Chief Mbonga to deliver Tarzan even more complicated. But he had done his due diligence and knew exactly where he was going, so he gathers several armed men to head upriver with him to abduct and deliver Tarzan to his mortal enemy. So one night, as the villagers were around a fireplace telling stories, they were ambushed and rounded up. But as they were busy harassing the villagers, Tarzan began to take them out one after the other. Unfortunately, as he was running to save the chief, he was caught with a rope on the neck. He tried fighting back, but he was overpowered and tied up even more. As they were leaving, they torched the houses and enslaved 10 of the strongest to be used as slaves. They also captured Jane, but she was not going peacefully. As they were walking towards Leon's boat, Dr. Williams appeared and started shooting at them, and when they saw the villagers mobilizing, ready to fight back, they started running, but Dr. Williams continued taking them out, one after the other until they dropped Tarzan. Tarzan then threw himself and started rolling down a small hill. Leon Rom quickly got into his boat and they rowed off. Although he had failed to capture Tarzan, he was not worried at all, as he was sure Tarzan would come after them, as they still had Jane. When morning came, the true extent of the attack could be clearly seen. The entire place was filled with a somber mood, as houses were burned to the ground, and many men were either killed or abducted, and as expected, Tarzan and some warriors started planning on how they would get Jane and other villagers back, and their plan was simple. They would use a shortcut and hop on a train heading in the same direction as Leon's boat, and use it to outflank the boat up the river. So they head off, running through the thick jungle going after their families. All the men were able to keep up with Tarzan, that is except for Dr. Williams, who was having a difficult time. They run until they come to a clearing up a cliff, where they could take directions from, and when Dr. Williams finally caught up, they all jump off the cliff, and the tree branches slowed them down. They used the big tree branches to go just above a train track, where a train was about to pass, and since Dr. Williams could not swing with the vine, he climbed on Tarzan's back, and as the train was passing by, they swung off, and landed on top of the train. Dr. Williams could not believe his eyes. Their suspicions of what was happening in the Congo was actually true. They find several train carriages filled with enslaved Africans, being transported to build a bridge up ahead. Angrily, Tarzan entered into a cabin where he found the soldiers who were involved in the enslaving of the locals, and when one dared to attack him, he fought back, beating them up so bad that he even knocked some off the train. The train driver was brought in, and he immediately began talking. He revealed that they are building a bridge for Leon's new army of 20,000 mercenaries, which only mean one thing, that Leon was planning to completely eradicate the whole of the Congo native population, and enslave whoever will remain. Far ahead up the river, Jane is chained to the boat railing, and her friend Wasimbu is locked inside a suspended cage in front of her, to make sure she does not misbehave, and anytime Jane does not obey a direct order, his cage is lowered closer and closer to the river, which ultimately forced her to do as she was told. Tarzan stops the train in the middle of nowhere, and after freeing all the slaves, the two started walking, heading to a place Tarzan was very familiar with. the place he had called home his entire childhood, but on the way there, a group of ostriches came running past them, but a male ostrich stopped and confronted them, to warn them to stay clear until all his flock passed, which is an important lesson on how real men should do to protect their families. When they enter into the jungle, they came across a group of gorillas, and when the gorillas saw Tarzan, they immediately recognized him. Unfortunately, they were not happy at all to see him, as Tarzan had left their troop and rejoined human society, so they considered him a deserter who was no longer welcome, and there was only one way to settle that kind of dispute. So Tarzan removed his shirt, ready to face Akut, who was once his brother but now the alpha male of the troop, and the two charged towards each other to fight. Tarzan was easily overpowered by the beast and knocked to the ground. Then Akut started smashing his back with its powerful punches, but luckily, Tarzan got a chance to fight back. He threw him into a nearby bush and the two rolled down a small hill. Akut then bit Tarzan on the back and finished the fight, and Akut saw Dr. Williams and approached him. At first, Williams thought of shooting the beast but quickly realized that was a bad idea, so he instead knelt down, and made himself as small as possible, which showed that he had surrendered. So Akut left the two, and allowed them a safe passage through his territory. That night, as Dr. Williams was treating his wounds, more of Tarzan's former friends found him. A group of elephants appeared from the darkness and walked right up to their old friend, and after a brief conversation, they continued with their journey. On the other side, up ahead on a hippo-infested part of the river, Jane started misbehaving, by speaking in Kuna language to her friend Wasimbu, telling him to escape without fighting in order to save himself. This made the guards so angry that they completely dropped the cage into the water, and when Jane saw this, she knocks out the two guards and jumped into the hippo-infested waters, luckily managing to swim to the river bank with seconds to spare from a hippo attack. Then the two start running deeper and deeper into the jungle trying to escape. Unfortunately, Jane ran directly into a gorilla's territory, and when they started becoming aggressive, she knelt down and made herself as small as possible trying to show them she meant no harm. Unfortunately, the situation got even worse as Leon and his men found her. A brave Leon slowly walked towards Jane, making sure his every move is calculated until he reached her. He then promised her he won't harm the animals if she agreed to come with him, but when she took his hand and surrendered, the soldiers opened fire. Tarzan heard her cries and immediately went nuts. He ran and jumped off a cliff and started swinging with the vines, heading towards his lover. The male gorillas also arrived and found most of the female gorillas already shot and killed. Tarzan quickly swung in and saved his brother Akut from a bullet. Then the soldiers quickly learned the true origin of the term guerrilla warfare, as they are all quickly killed. Leon and his few remaining men arrived in Chief Mbonga's territory, to trick Tarzan into delivering himself to Chief Mbonga, and immediately Tarzan arrived, Mbonga's warriors were waiting for him and attacked, and when it seemed like the warriors were not doing the job, Chief Mbonga himself stepped out to face his enemy, and the two started fighting. At first, Tarzan was putting up a spirited fight but he was soon outnumbered and outpowered. He tried explaining to the chief that all their lives were in danger, as Leon was bringing an army to annihilate them all, but Chief Mbonga was having none of it, forcing Tarzan to beat and hold the chief with a knife to his throat, and Chief Mbonga started shedding tears, when he remembered what Tarzan had taken from him. It turns out, many years ago, Mbonga's son came across Tarzan's gorilla mother, and as killing big prey was part of his tribe's rite of passage, the boy shot and killed Tarzan's mother. Angrily, Tarzan mobilized all the gorillas and they went after them, and when Tarzan caught up with this boy, he killed him in cold blood. When the body of his only son was brought to him, to say he was heartbroken would be an understatement, and in a way, they both understood each other's pain, as they had lost somebody so dear to them. Chief Mbonga tried to argue that his son was just a boy, and there was no way of him knowing a beast could be a mother to a human child. Then out of nowhere, Akut and other gorillas came from all directions. They had come to protect one of their own. They quickly surrounded Tarzan, ready to put their lives down to save his. Dr. Williams quickly intervened and confirmed Tarzan's earlier statement, that Leon was planning to completely kill everyone on the Congo and enslave those who remain, and Chief Mbonga believed him, and called off the attack. When the two finally made it to Boma, they found the situation worse than they thought. Leon already had 1,000 heavily armed men, and an army of 20,000 mercenaries could be seen from far arriving at the port, so Tarzan had to improvise in order to get a chance to win. He ran and got his lion friends and they began to chase wildebeests, directing the herd toward the Boma Bay. At the same time, Wasimbu and his tribesmen arrived and started taking out the guards and freeing the slaves. The wildebeests reached and ran through everything, completely destroying every structure on their path. Leon was forced to also run to save his own life, but he did not leave Jane. He dragged her along with him. and when Tarzan saw this, he jumped on a wildebeest, then swung using an attached hook and grabbed Jane. Before throwing her to safety, he then ran through a collapsing bridge and dived into the ocean, going after Leon, who was already on his boat with the diamonds ready to pay the mercenaries. Dr. Williams took a machine gun and just opened fire, indiscriminately shooting everything and everyone on that boat, allowing Tarzan to catch up. He then put the already damaged boat on full steam, turning it into a ticking time bomb. Unfortunately, Leon jumps from behind and tied a rope around Tarzan's neck, which tightened the more he struggled, but Tarzan began to produce low growls, summoning crocodiles. He jumps and holds Leon tightly with his legs, until the crocodiles came close enough, and knocks him into the crocodiles' waters, and Leon was very quickly devoured by them. The steam engine reached its breaking point and blew up, with all the diamond on it. The locals, who had come out in large numbers, ready to defend their lands, celebrate as Tarzan had helped them win the war even before it had started. Please like and subscribe for more.